Hello there. Do you ever feel like you can just never get there? No matter how much you learn, no matter how much you grow, no matter how hard you try, you never get there, wherever there is at. And I have this butterfly here because I learned something from it, a new thing from it, specifically from the monarch butterfly. Did you know that the monarch butterfly migrates? It's the only butterfly that does. Migrates from Mexico to Canada and back every year. They go through this. But it takes 4 generations for that migration to be a complete cycle. And I was made aware of this the other day listening to a gentleman. He was talking about us creating momentum for future generations, and he brought up the multi-generational migration of the monarch butterfly. I studied it a little bit to learn more about this multi-generational thing because I found it very intriguing, because overcoming trauma can feel like we're never going to get there. I have felt that way myself. I read an article years ago by a woman who wrote it that if you're, I forgot what it was called exactly, but how it's courageous to be a parent if you have been through trauma. In this article, she talked about how your children will never understand you, and that's a good thing, which is both comforting and discouraging at the same time. Today, I read another article about a woman who had written concerning her parents and her children. She was the one in the middle. And her children have a great relationship with her parents. The article is something like, I envy the relationship my children have with my parents, or something like that. It was profound to me as she said the people who are being the grandparents to her children are not the same people who were her parents. And I understand that. I had parents like that, only my children did not get the opportunity to have a relationship with my dad. He died while I was growing up. They had a relationship with my mom a little bit, but she died before, when they were still quite young, as she had not processed her trauma completely, was just beginning to deal with her own feelings. So she didn't have what I would say an emotionally, like with emotional intelligence, that term. She didn't have that with them, though she had a much greater relationship with them than I did as a child. What does all this have to do with getting somewhere? I thought of those 2 articles and this butterfly. I thought of my conversations I've had with my children, because I didn't want to have children when I first got married. I was terrified to have children. I was terrified of messing them up because of the trauma in me. I had no emotional intelligence, though that term did not exist when I got married. I learned through studying that emotional intelligence was first written about and used as a term in 1985. I had been married for 5 years already, had both of my children by that time. I was afraid, but God. I got married by faith. I had my children by faith. It's a whole big story, which if you want to read it, it's in my book, Emerging with Wings, which alludes to the butterfly in some way. And as I was looking over the whole scope of this, I thought of the 4th generation of the monarch. The first 3 generations of the monarch go from Mexico up to Canada, But it is the 4th generation that is born, or whatever comes to life up in Canada, that makes it all the way back down. They call this a super generation butterfly, monarch butterfly, and one website called it a Methuselah. They live 4 to 6 times longer than the other butterflies, the other generations. I found this fascinating. What makes the difference between these first 3 and the last 4? they're empowered by the grace of God to do that somehow. It's just the way it takes place. It's how God created it, and I find that fascinating. That led me right to what had happened with me in my life as I had my kids. As I said, I was terrified to have children. I was terrified of being a parent because of my trauma. I didn't want to hurt my children. I didn't want to hurt anyone. And I had come to faith in Jesus. He was working on me, changing me, and I figured that was a big enough job to just work on myself. And I worked on myself, and I felt like I would never get there. But as my children are adults now, with children of their own, I've apologized for numerous things that I have done in their growing up. Many things they have blown off, like it was not a big deal. And the things I could have done to hurt them, that I had such potential to do the same generational trauma that happens when you don't address it, that was cut off. And I know why. It's the thing that will get you there. There's one thing that if you will grab a hold of, it will turn you into a super generational monarch butterfly, so to speak. And that is the grace of God. You don't even have to understand the grace of God for it to work. How do I know that? I've written about it on my website, danielleburnock.com. I have an article there called The Power of Grace. Go and read it, and you will learn a little bit about that. I got married by the grace of God. At my wedding, the pastor said something about grace, and my heart just latched on it. When I had my children, both of them, their middle names mean grace. Because in my heart, I reached for the grace of God, somehow intuitively knowing that was the superpower that I needed, even though I had no idea what the grace of God was. And so if you are here going, what's the grace of God? I don't know. I've heard that as a 5-letter word. They talk about it at church and blah, 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 blah. I dare you to reach for it. Say, hey, God, this lady on the internet, this lady that says she's that lady on the internet who loves me, she said this grace thing is a big deal. And I want you to teach me about it. I want you to show me it. And he will. Because that grace will make all the difference in your life. And God will teach you what that grace is. If you understand the grace and don't know how to grab a hold of it, get a copy of my book, Because You Matter. There's a chapter in there called Owning Your Grace. Owning Grace. And it will show you how to go through that. If you would rather, I need to know how it operated in someone's life. I don't want a how-to, leave me alone. I don't like that stuff. Then I would say, get a copy of my book, Emerging with Wings, and you will read how the grace of God unfolded in my life. And my eyes went, wow. And then your eyes can go, wow. And then you can tap into the grace of God in your life, because the power of grace will turn you into a Methuselah on the inside. It will get you where you need to go, because God loves you and I love you. I'm Danielle Burnock from danielleburnock.com. Love yourself from Survive to Thrive, that lady on the internet who loves you, and I want you to tap into the grace of God because I love you. So till next time, mwah.